Yeah, Marty Biron, I'm not too sure if you're cooking here, or if this is really just a case of some guys potentially looking in the mirror. Today what we're doing is going over to a video segment on BPM Sports Talk Radio. This was from earlier this week on November 26th, and it features former NHL goaltender turned TSN, NHL Network, among other things, analyst Marty Biron. I'll leave a link in the description to this video clip. It's on the BPM Sports Talk Radio Twitter account. And you can see right here in the translated text from French into English, this is what the clip ends up saying. Marty Biron thinks that if the New York Rangers withhold $3 million from Jacob Trouba's salary, the Canadiens must be interested in him. He would even be willing to give Arber Xhekaj in return. And, okay, I wanted to dive into this, because it's interesting to me that this sort of an idea would even be processed or talked about on air. Arber Xhekaj for Jacob Trouba. Arber Xhekaj for Jacob Trouba. Aren't these guys, like, almost exactly the same kind of player? At least, when I think about the archetype of player that you're getting out of a Jacob Trouba or out of an Arber Xhekaj. If you talk about fantasy hockey at least, I think a lot of these guys bring similar things. Physical play, strong play, intimidating play. They have profiles that their opponents are very scared to go out there and challenge, and these guys can definitely lay a punch or two. You also have yourselves the irresponsibilities that bring themselves up as well. Jacob Trouba can get turnstiled once in a while. We saw that a lot in the playoffs last year. Arber Xhekaj can take some very bad penalties every so often. So it's certainly not perfect for either of these two guys when they are doing their thing. But, of course, if you're talking about, who's the better player, who's the guy you'd rather have right now, I think Jacob Trouba is probably the player that is, like, more refined, more poised. Although, only barely. He is an NHL veteran after all. He is an NHL captain. He is a leader. A lot of the things that you would hope that Arber Xhekaj has in his game in the future, that he grows into. A lot of those things you hope that he has, I'd say that Jacob Trouba kind of already has, but just with a lot more money attached to his name. So, when I think about the idea of acquiring one for the other, when I think about the teams, I don't really think anything changes, honestly. Sure, positionally, you're changing from an Arber Xhekaj to a Jacob Trouba, from a left to a right. And, oh man, I just realized how weird that sounds. No. There's a different handiness there. And, of course, Jacob Trouba can add on to the Canadiens' right side defense. But also, you're getting a little bit more stability out of that. But the question is that kind of the stability that the Canadiens need? I'm not too sure, to be honest. If Jacob Trouba is already getting all this flack for being the guy that he is in New York, who's to say that everything would be better in Montreal? Is he an upgrade over Xhekaj? Okay, sure, I guess so, but Jacob Trouba is not going to come into Montreal and people are going to adore him in the same way that they adored Shea Weber, for example. That's just not going to happen here. I get that you could say that Jacob Trouba puts in effort at times, but there are still moments throughout his career, and especially in the past year or so, when he looks really bad in shifts, he looks totally out of place, he gets walked, he gets turnstiled, the rush comes the opposite way, he goes for a hit, it doesn't work. There are so many disaster oh-no moments out of Jacob Trouba and his profile nowadays that I think it's difficult for the Montreal Canadiens to fully internalize the acquisition of a Jacob Trouba for Arber Xhekaj swap. Now, for the New York Rangers, if you wanted to talk about what this would do for them, of course, you're shaking things up. You're making the team worse, technically, because I'd say that Xhekaj is a worse player than Trouba, but you are getting a little bit more longer-term potential, because Trouba, of course, is a lot older. Arber Xhekaj is at the start of his NHL career. If you're hoping that Xhekaj becomes somebody like Trouba down the line, maybe with a little bit more polished-up instincts and refined defensive play, then that's kind of the best-case scenario. But it's good now because you have the chance to mold him into that. You're going to have to give him the proper care and the proper treatment to make sure he's able to fulfill that, but there's potential there, and you can never argue with potential. It's just, I think this kind of idea is pretty interesting here. I don't know, do you think it works? 30% salary retained, Jacob Trouba for Arber Xhekaj. Marty Biron even says in the video clip that Jacob Trouba is exactly what the Montreal Canadiens are missing. And I guess if you were to make a trade, it wouldn't necessarily be a one-for-one swap. It would probably be like Arber Xhekaj plus a prospect or something for Jacob Trouba. I don't know, man. I think Trouba does make the team better, but is he really the guy the Canadiens need? Not too sure. I mean, hey, if anything, it would stabilize that back end on the right side a little bit more and make it so that you don't have to keep on overworking certain guys. I mean, David Savard is, of course, a righty. You have a whole bunch of other righties rotating around, Mailloux, Biron, and then I guess Cayden. He's a lefty, but he's been playing on the right side as of late. So if you really wanted to stabilize things, have everything work itself out so that Hudson can play with Savard, for example, and Cayden can have his own thing going on the second pair. If you wanted to say, hey, Cayden, we want to try to get you to start charging your lineup offensively. You're not playing with Hudson anymore. You kind of have to get offense yourself. If you can do that with Jacob Trouba at his side, honestly, I think that's a pretty good mentor for Cayden to learn from. But also, I think stylistically, Guhle and Trouba on a pairing would be a very good fit. If Trouba freaks it up defensively, you have Cayden back there. And when the play is getting cycled around the Canadian zone, nobody's going to be wanting to mess with this pairing physically. And now that I'm starting to think about it, wow, I'm like low-key realizing it throughout this video what Marty Biron actually means. It would be an upgrade for Montreal over Arber Xhekaj, that's for sure, but the Rangers looking to shake things up. If this is the kind of younger dude that they would be interested in Arber Xhekaj, then hey, I guess it would make sense. There have been reports that a lot of NHL teams would be interested in Arber Xhekaj, and all it takes is a matter of minutes for something to get done. If a team really wants Xhekaj, and it's been noted very heavily that teams have wanted him for first-round picks and everything else, if the right offer comes along, Montreal's like, hey, we already rejected these trades for first-round picks. What is it that you have to offer us, New York? And if New York's like, hey, here's our captain. If he's willing to come to Montreal, which I don't know, maybe he would be, maybe he wouldn't be, I'm not too sure. I would guess that maybe Montreal would be an okay destination. Aside from the entire being in Canada thing, I think there's a lot of things that Montreal has that New Yorkers or people who play in New York would value, like the fan base, the dedication, the location's pretty nice, so I don't know. There is an idea that says in me that it would make sense. Let's say, I don't know, Xhekaj and another prospect, a first rounder like, dare I say Owen Beck, for example? Xhekaj and Owen Beck for Jacob Trouba, something like that. Maybe add on a third or a fourth if you really need to make things balance out. But ultimately, this Jacob Trouba trade idea thing is pretty interesting, and I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. The video will be linked in the description as well to the BPM Sports Talk hit where Marty Biron goes out there and speaks out about this trade idea. If you're a Rangers fan, what are your thoughts on the acquisition of Arber Xhekaj to be? And if you're a Canadiens fan, how do you feel about the idea of Troubs coming over to the Montreal Canadiens? There's a new tank commander in the station, baby. Everything Shea Weber stood for. I think you can bring cut and paste into Jacob Trouba's game, except without the big boom and slap shot and the offensive productivity. Add on a little bit more defensive carelessness and maybe a little bit of recklessness, and you have this cut and paste version. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this entire trade idea. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.